Like we talked, the matches with Ishii and Naito have particularly stood out. So, he's just kind of
the Shingo match was amazing.
Yeah, the match with Shingo was good as well. So I think he's got a lot of attention on him, and now he's, as we said before, he's in a position right now where he's leading the B block, and with 4 matches to go. We'll see if he keeps up the good performances, if he keeps winning, and if he makes a case to get himself into the finals.
I think it's amazing that looking at this tournament, you're already like, oh man, who's going to be the one to beat Jon Moxley? Jon Moxley's been in New Japan for 2 months, a month and a half, maybe 2 months. So for them to be able to build him up and put such an emphasis on his first loss and making another, making another star, or, that loss already means so much, because they don't trade the. Can't curse this week, right? Thumbs up, thumbs down. No cursing. Okay, so the fact that they're able to build that character, and through great performances, surprising performances, wins over, like you mentioned, the win over Naito was probably the biggest surprise. I think almost everybody picked Naito to beat. I'm not getting arrested. That's good news. It's not me. Everybody picked Naito to really win that match. So to have Moxley win that match, you got him over by, his character and his name recognition, of course, but New Japan made him important by putting him in a position to be important, to get over, because we know, we both know he's not going to stay in New Japan forever. He's going to AEW. He signed the deal. Once TV starts in October, he's out. So building up Moxley strong, getting him strong, getting that person that defeats him, the rub from him, while he built up his name in the 3 months he's in New Japan just to go to AEW. Like, literally everybody wins, and this situation could not have worked out any better for New Japan or Moxley.
Or Yano, who apparently might beat him this week and get that signature victory that you're talking about. But yeah, no one really knew, right? He of course had wrestled on the independent scene before going to WWE, was in NXT, and then quickly made it up to the main roster. But I don't think anybody really expected this level, of I guess, of high quality matches that he's been delivering, and the fact that the crowd has taken to him and reacts to him. And his matches are something a little bit different, versus what you might see in like a Naito, Okada, Tanahashi type set of matches that I think, folks in Japan are probably used to. So it's just a different style. He, incorporates some of the weapons on the outside. So, he has a lot of different possibilities in terms of, beyond the tournament, whatever feuds he may or may not get into in Japan or come back for. As you noted, he's slated for the All Out show, Labor Day weekend for AEW. He's going to fight Kenny Omega. And then the weekly TV show starts October the 2nd. So he's going to be doing a lot of work, of course, for AEW going forward. Depends, I guess, on seeing how he'll go forward in Japan, if he'll work some big shows or the Dome or whatever it might be. I'm sure, he's got it in his contract to do that type of stuff. But yeah, good on him. He was a recognizable guy, right, in the wrestling industry just from WWE. And, now he's kind of gone out and, enhanced his reputation even further in his work in AEW in Japan so far.
I feel like that was a very smart alecky response by you in regards to the Yano. Yes, I do believe Yano's going to beat him, but I think the person that's going to get the rub from this is going to be Juice Robinson, because at some point they're going to have the rematch for the U.S. heavyweight title, and I think Juice Robinson's going to get the W over Moxley. It's probably the deal. He came in, beat Juice for the title, and Juice is slowly but surely really winning me over. I wasn't a huge fan of him as CJ Parker because I never watched Baywatch, but I wasn't a huge fan of him at NXT either. And it became like a 6-man guy in New Japan, then he became a U.S. heavyweight guy, and now he's like literally to be taken serious in the G1. I think that's a credit to him and a credit to the his ability to get up and just leave America and be like, listen, I'm going to Japan and I'm going to try something new. So good on him. But I really think, looking at this tournament, nobody nobody's getting buried in the tournament except for Zack Sabre Jr., which I think kind of sucks, especially for Rev Pro because he's the Rev Pro champion. Last night, I do believe he did beat Will Ospreay. Last night's the only night, again, like you, I haven't watched yet, but he was at the bottom at 4 points. And he kind of looks like a little bit of a crybaby, if you will, Joe, in losing, which is a gimmick, and that's fine. You know, he loses and then he cries and he throws things, so that's cool. So, but I'm glad he got a win over Will Ospreay because I don't think I could have taken another Zack Sabre Jr. loss because his matches have been very entertaining. So now, as a guy that's you first time ever watching the G1, what are you? Does anything surprised you so far about this tournament? Not the outcome of the matches, but like just watching the tournament itself. Like, did you, are you not overexposed to wrestling? Are you surprised like how good matches are in and out? Like the shape these guys are in, the tag matches are good. What really kind of took you aback about this tournament?
Well, I mean, I guess it's two things. I guess just having not watched these in previous years, the first thing I guess is just the length of the shows, right? I mean, they're really all 3 hours or so, give or take, maybe plus or minus 5 or 10 minutes, depending on the night. And they get, I think, about 9 matches in per night, 5 block matches, and then 3 or 4 of the tag matches. And they keep the show moving, right? So there's not a lot of in between stuff in between the matches. I know the end of the show kind of ends with a go home promo, but other than that, it's just kind of like the introduction, the introduction credits, and then they go to the matches and they just run right through them. So I guess that was one thing I really wasn't aware of, having mostly only watched the big shows for New Japan, which are a lot longer, like 4 to 5 hours. So that was probably the first thing that really jumped out at me. And the other thing, I guess, is, I know you mentioned, outside of the match results, but some of the match results, I think, it's just interesting how they kind of pick and choose, when certain guys lose, right? I mean, you always want to try to protect your big stars and your main eventers, but in a tournament like this, they're all wrestling 9 matches apiece. There are a lot of head-to-head stuff that you have to kind of figure out with the way the blocks are set up. So it's just interesting to see, right? Like Naito loses his first 2 matches. Tanahashi loses some matches. Sabre's lost a bunch of matches, like you said. They put Kenta and Moxley at the top of each block right away, which I thought was surprising. I wasn't really expecting them to take the 2 outsider guys who just came in and shoot them to the top of the standings right away. Seems like they've kind of, at least to this point, given a little bit more credence to Evil over Sonata between those guys. So it's just interesting to see, right, like the faction matches and how guys compare. So I guess that's the other piece of it that is interesting to me, just kind of seeing how those guys interact and how it all kind of pieces together in the end.
I don't want to pull a comparison to the WWE, but I'm going to ask you this question here. How do you think New Japan and the booking are able to have guys lose clean, Tanahashi, for example, have him lose clean as a sheet, middle of the ring, tapping out, but keep him strong and have the fans still see him as a legitimate threat? How do they do that, and how does WWE do such a terrible job at that?
Well, I think it's 2 things. One is, a lot of these guys that they have as main event level guys are already pretty established and don't lose very often, right? Because the New Japan schedule it's not like WWE where they have 1 to 2 TV shows a week and then a pay-per-view once a month and all that type of stuff. There's less frequency, at least up until like this section of G1 matches where guys don't wrestle as much and don't lose as much. So I think that's the first thing. And I think the guys are they have built up credibility, right? So a guy like Tanahashi, who's, you can compare him in terms of stature to like a John Cena in the US in the sense, right, that he's about the same age. He's been around about the same amount of time. He's won the titles more than anybody. So he can lose a decent amount, as Cena had done towards the end of his, run in WWE. And he's still John Cena, right? He's still Tanahashi. So you can have him do that and still be okay. So I think that's part of it, right? I mean, when you're in WWE, if you're on TV every week, they haven't done a good job of protecting guys on television. So inevitably guys lose matches on Raw or SmackDown, or they lose at the pay-per-view. The only guy that they really can protect for the most part has been, Lesnar, because he doesn't wrestle every week. So you can have him lose a lot more infrequently. But guys that are on TV all the time, they ultimately lose. That's why guys like, Kevin Owens and, Roman Reigns and Rollins, these guys lose all the time. So I'm not surprised when they lose, but when I see some of these guys like Naito or Okada or whomever it is lose a match, it's like, oh, it means a little more because they don't have to wrestle as much and they don't lose as much.
I think and that's a good point that you mentioned. I think when like a Naito loses or like Moxley beating Naito was a big deal, and that loss was able to elevate. That loss for Naito was able to elevate Jon Moxley. So I think that's another big thing. Because, like, for example, on Raw, I could watch probably Titus beat Seth Rollins and be like, okay, nobody cares because they know it's not going to go anywhere. But when you have like a Naito lose clean to Jon Moxley, it's like, all right, they're doing something with this Jon Moxley fella, and they're going to push him. And I'm interested to see how the rest of the tournament shakes out. And while we're talking about the rest of the tournament, Joe, I want you to give me your what to watch for this week.
Let's see. What to watch for this coming week? Well, of course, we have the next set of G1 matches in terms of night 12 coming up this week. I think, anything that involves Ishii, I would watch at this point because everything I've seen from him in this tournament has been solid gold, as they say. So any Ishii match, I would take a look out for that. I don't think there's too much else. I'm trying to think of what else over the weekend is going to be happening. Not much this weekend coming up. The following weekend, I think, is where things will pick up a little bit with NXT and SummerSlam and then AEW towards the end of the month. But I think that's what I would say. If you get a chance to watch any of Tomohiro Ishii's matches, that would be what I would look out for. What about you?
Ishii versus Goto this week. I love Hiroki Goto. I think he's so incredibly underrated in terms of New Japan Pro Wrestling stars. And just everything you said, Ishii's been he's been the best bout machine. He has been amazing. The dude's been a stud, 43 years old. Who gives a doesn't matter. Ishii is the guy to watch this week, and I back you completely. While we're talking about things to watch, I'm going to give you my match of the week from last week. And I'm going to throw a little swerve screw job here for you, Joe, because it didn't air last week, but I watched it this week. It was from like 2 weeks ago. Ilya Dragunov versus Jordan Devlin at Progress Chapter 91. Holy cow, Joe. What a match. And I know you got a little bit of time tonight. You're saying, man, that sounds like something I would love to see because I know you're a big Jordan Devlin guy. When he's at home, he's the import killer, but when he's overseas, he's the killer import. You're saying, man, where can I watch Jordan Devlin versus Ilya Dragunov? Joe, I'm going to tell you. I want you to head over to powerslam.tv. You use our promo code DADDY all night long. You get the first 30 days free. You can watch Progress Chapter 91. So for me, the match of the week this week was Dragunov and Jordan Devlin. I have not finished the event yet, Joe, but I'm going to tell you the main event is your boy Eddie Kingston versus Walter.
Well, that sounds like it should be a pretty good show. But yes, as you mentioned, PowerSlam TV now has Progress Wrestling on it. So it's definitely worth checking out for that and many other promotions that appear on the powerslam.tv subscription service. So I encourage anyone who is listening to check that out and use our promo code all night long, as you mentioned.
What about you? What was your match of the week, Joe? Nobody cares about me. They want to hear the Stallions match of the week.
I don't think that's true. The two matches that stand out to me as far as over the last week, what I've watched, going with the theme of Ishii, the Ishii versus Juice Robinson match from the other night, this past weekend was very good. And on Ring of Honor TV last week, they had an 8-man tag. It was 8-man, now 6-man. Probably 6-man tag between Villain Enterprises and Lifeblood that turned into a street fight, which was a pretty good little main event on Ring of Honor television last week. So if anybody follows that product or wants to go check it out, it's a pretty good little brawl with some cool spots to wrap it up. So those will probably be the two matches for me.
Another thing to watch out for this week, I can't tell you what to watch because I haven't watched it yet myself, but the Briscoe Brothers versus Dragon Lee and Roosh is on this week's episode of Ring of Honor TV. And the match was so good, Ring of Honor dropped that match like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I'm looking forward to that match. And, of course, the Ring of Honor, the Briscoe Brothers the new Ring of Honor